Hey, so am I live? All right, I haven't used OBS before or in a long time. I never really knew how to use it very well, but we're gonna try this. We're gonna do a live stream today to check out the Ghost module because it came only 2 days ago, so I didn't really have time to make a nice in-depth edited video. But I did have enough time to check it out and really figure out all that it does and how cool it is. So, without further ado, well, in fact, let's have some further ado just because I want some people present in this live stream. So, let's share. Hold on. Oh, cool. So there's already 7 people watching. Hello, hello. Silent Pity, Sandy Julkick. Nice to see you all here. You know, before we really get started with the Ghost, I'm going to share this in Facebook and maybe get a few more people in here before we really get going with it. Please hang in there. I promise I won't be long. Streaming Ghost. Streaming Ghost by Andrew Huang and Endorphines. Okay. Now, and hit the link and post, and then I will also do that in the Eurorack group in Facebook, and that should be enough to get some more people in here. Yeah, so I'm testing this new format of live streaming stuff because I think it'll make the channel more dynamic. So instead of only having these highly edited and scripted videos, it's just easier and faster to just go online live with something. So live stream, live deep dive of Ghost right now. Okay, post it. All right, let's go back here. Now I should have a chat window. I don't own a modular gear. Would you recommend this as a starter? So Silent Pity. This module is really amazing because it has delay, it has reverb, it has compression, it has filter. So you can start with it because what you can do is use it to process any external gear. So you can plug in maybe a microfreak and really get some crazy different sounds out of it by using this module. So while I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as your first module for a modular system, I'd probably start with something that is a sound source. This could also be super useful even if it's your only module. You could just use it as a piece of studio gear. And excuse me. So in that sense, depending on what setup you already have, exactly, you can use it with other synths you already own. So let me start talking about it. I think, well, there's only 8 people watching, 9, but it's okay. We'll start talking about it. You guys don't have to be waiting for the crowd to come in. So anyway, I have a rack here, performance case set up. This is the case I used for my performance at NobCon last month, and I'm also playing it at Mex Synthco, which is the Mexican synth convention, which is this month in about 9 days. And so even though I have a lot more stuff. Let me see if you can. Oh, I can't really turn my computer right now because it's all tethered with cables. But yeah, you can check out my channel. You'll see there's a lot of stuff. But this is what I've assembled to be my main travel and performance case. And I had been looking for something to be my end of chain effects processor. So before I had the Ghost, I was using my Monsoon only because it has a really nice reverb and it was the only true stereo reverb, if it's even true stereo, but it has a stereo input. Because most of my voices here are stereo. I have the Dust of Time, it's a stereo oscillator. The Arbhar by Instro has stereo output, so does the Morphogene. The 3-body triple FPGA oscillator, there will be a review of this module coming soon as well. This one can be used in stereo. You can use sine and cosine outputs to create a stereo sound. And the Ericson's Sonic Potions LXR drum is also a stereo. I mean, it can be used in stereo because you can do panning internally of the drum voices. So just quickly, the way I have this set up, I have the Endorphins sequencer here, the ground control. It's controlling all of the drum voices on the LXR, right? So here, if I choose track D, we can hear these. Now, all the voices are going straight out of stereo output here into my stereo mixer, the ST Mix, and except for the kick drum. The kick drum has its own cable going straight to my outboard mixer that I'm using right now to mix my voice so you all can hear me. The stereo output from the Ghost, and the only other source is the kick drum that I've routed to output 3. And the reason for that is because I want to demonstrate. Oh, thanks, Silent Pity. I'm glad you saw my performance. That's cool. Oddball, all things are going well. Thank you. So I'll continue with my explanation. And there is a sidechain input with its own dedicated envelope on the Ghost. So I'm splitting, I don't know if you can really see it, but I'm splitting the bass drum trigger output to both trigger my bass drum and the sidechain input on the Ghost. Now the Ghost operation, it looks crowded. I've heard a lot of people complain, but it's actually really playable. The spacing of the knobs is very logical, and there's enough space to really fit my fingers around each knob. I like the big one here for the filter. In its middle position, it's not filtering anything. It's a low pass when you turn it down, and the high pass when you turn it up. It is resonant, and there is an alternate mode, which is a comb filter, and we'll hear how all that sounds in a bit. There are extra functions for most of the knobs, and the way you access them is by just pressing the routing button. It becomes a shift button. So, for example, if I want the reverb, I can change the tail here. I can change the pre-delay if I hold the routing button and turn that knob, or if I don't hold it, it's just the tail, or it's just the decay of the reverb. So let's turn the reverb all the way down and the delay all the way down, distortion all the way down, filter in the center. So here I'm playing. You don't see my KeyStep Pro controller, but it's basically controlling track 2 here of the ground control, which is a voice made with the Neutron Dust of Time stereo oscillator. It's more than an oscillator, really. It's a full modular in there. Laurie says that the knob layout is a lot better than the Queen of Pentacles. I don't have the Queen of Pentacles, but I assume that you are correct. It's actually not that bad. I mean, in pictures it looks kind of crowded, but it doesn't feel crowded when you're playing it. Right, there's a compressor here too. I can turn the compressor all the way down for now. And the sidechain, for now I don't want to use the sidechain. So what I'm going to do is turn the depth of the sidechain down, right? So the main function of the sidechain knob is the decay of the internal envelope, and you do have an output for that envelope as well, so you can actually use that envelope to create your bass drum sound, right? If you send it to the amplitude and pitch of a sine wave, for example. But right now I want the depth all the way down because I don't want to use it. So I'm going to hold the routing switch and turn the sidechain knob all the way down. So that way I don't have to unplug my trigger that I'm sending it, right? Now the main function, I think I've already mentioned, is the decay of the internal envelope. So this sidechain isn't really for audio. Like it's not a follower. It's its own envelope, right? Which is actually cool. I feel like it gives you better control than if it was just if you were sending the actual audio from the kick drum in there. So, so that's really cool. So anyway, I've turned the depth down, so it won't really be affected by anything. So again, let's see this very plain and dry sound coming out of my dust of time here. Right? Why don't we program a little sequence with it? So let me choose a new blank sequence here. Number pattern C. And what I'll do is I'll come to drum here and just quickly record a 4 on the floor kick drum. Just so we have kind of a metronome, right? And right now this bass drum is outside of the ghost. It's going straight into my mixer. And I'll turn on the sequence, the recording here. Why don't we make it longer? Let's make it a 2-bar sequence. Oh, we need to go back into recording the kick drum here so that we can have those 2 bars filled with 4 on the floor. There we go. Just a little change there. Now we'll go to track 2 and just record it normally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. All right, I changed the last step on my bass drum, not on the. So now I can. Let's just start it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3. No, I didn't like that. Let's try again. So just cleared it. Oddball is asking a question. Doesn't that just make it a VCA? I assumed you're talking about the. Yes, there is a VCA. There's 2 VCAs actually in the module. There's an input VCA, which will affect the way the distortion responds, which is really nice. So you can actually use it as part of your voice as well. You can just send the envelope. You can even use the internal envelope for that, right? You can send the trigger to the trigger input over here, and then send the output of the envelope output to the pre-VCA, and already have a VCA and envelope generator that you can use, and even a filter. So yeah, you can use this as a big part of your voice. You would just need to send it in an oscillator. So yeah, it's just the sidechain is basically an envelope generator sending a negative envelope to the output VCA, because there's also an output VCA there. So this thing is just so deep, it's intense. It does so much, but it's actually really intuitive, surprisingly so. When I first looked at it, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to study the hell out of this. But it was very immediate when I started playing with it. Hey, can you stop with the AI dating? I'm gonna throw this person out. Put user on timeout. There you go. What kind of controller are you using to program your sequence? I'm using the KeyStep Pro, although I could just use the keys on the ground control itself, but I just like having normal keys and more octaves, and just it's more playable. Anyway, let's go back to hearing that. Now I'm gonna mute that kick drum so that we can just hear the sound of the dust of time, and now we can start playing with the ghost, right? So the first thing is the filter. See, I can make it resonant. Sounds really nice. And as I've mentioned, it's a low pass for the first half of the knob, and then it becomes a high pass. So it could really be used as sort of a performance DJ type effect for your whole mix, right? But why don't we program a little more drums here? For some reason I recorded that on track 2. How was the undo on this? I don't remember. I'm just gonna record the sequence again. There we go. Okay. Okay. For some reason it's not recording. Oh yeah, it's muted. Now this hi-hat's a little loud, so I'm gonna come here to, it's actually a clap, and we're gonna turn down the volume on it. That's better. So now, see, as I turn up the right, now remember the kick drum is going through the main mixer, so it's not affected. It's probably a good idea in a live performance to just have the kick drum be its own thing and not be affected by the effects. You don't really need reverb and delay on the kick drum. If you do, it's easy enough for me to just change the routing here. Right now it's on L2, right? Left 2. If I put it on stereo, then it's going through, or even effects, it's going through the ghost. See, it becomes kind of this isolator effect, kind of like a DJ thing, right? If I leave it in the middle, it's not being affected at all. Anyway, let me go back to the original routing I had, so we can have that kick drum be nice and punchy throughout. Yeah, big DJ filter there at random. You are correct, sir. And there's plenty of resonance. Now there's also a compressor. It's a single knob compressor, which is just got this optimized response. Let's turn up the volume a little bit here. There's a tone knob, which is another filter, right? The tone knob is like a tilt filter, so if you turn it down, it just makes it darker. It just rolls off some of the highs. And if you turn it up, it rolls off some of the lows. Right? So this is just a nice pre-filter, right? And there's distortion too. Hold on, let me turn down slightly the ghost so we can hear my voice better. Kick drum too. Alright, it's getting loud there. Because now we're going to turn up the distortion, see? Right, and since I have the compressor up, you don't get a change in the volume, you just get a change in the timbre. additionally, check out the distortion when it's low. Very cool. Now, there's an additional distortion too, which is the clipping on the output here. So if I have my output volume at 3 o'clock, if I go beyond that, then you get this clipping, see? Very cool. Let's go back. Open this up again, turn on the resonance. Now let's hear the delay. Now the delay, I'm sending clock output from my sequencer into the clock input of the Ghost, and that times the delay. So as I turn the delay up, and here you have the time division. You can choose a specific time division for the delay effect. And it does sound good. Okay, so the delay is like a dry wet. Okay. And here's the repeats, which is the feedback. So that right there is really nice. Like I didn't have a delay in my case before because I was just using the monsoon for reverb. Okay, so now here's the reverb. Now, pre-delay is a little long, so I'm going to turn it down. We'll do that by holding the routing button and turning that down. And I can make the tail longer. Now here, let's turn off the drums. Let's just hear it on that voice. Make the voice a little more mellow too. Maybe a little less of that swarm oscillator. That distortion now. You get a clipping LED there. Now I've turned the distortion down. And let's turn down the output clipping as well. And now this is clean, right? Maybe a little more high content so we can hear how the reverb responds to the higher stuff. So yeah, it's a really nice clean reverb. By the way, in case you're wondering, the module is not noisy. Like at first I heard noise, but it was because I was sending, my signals were too low, so I was boosting it in the mixer. So yeah, so I was hearing noise. And if you turn up the distortion, and then yeah, you'll be amplifying the input noise. But it's not really audible when you're in when you have sound going through it. All right, Oddball. Thank you for hanging, and come and finish watching later because this will be up in the channel. All right. Okay. So there's the reverb. And this is a hall reverb. You can't really change, there's only 2 algorithms, right? And you can't change much about it more than the pre-delay, the tail. There you go, the wash of reverb now. And in case you're wondering, the sample rate and bit depth of this thing is intense. You don't usually see a module with such high specs in Eurorack. This has 32-bit, 96 kilohertz, right? So it's super high quality. And the distortion algorithm, it is digital, but it's got 8 times over sampling. If you know what that means, it basically means you get no audible aliasing or any digital artifacts. So it's virtually sounds like a analog distortion. So yeah, that's a really nice reverb. Now if I want to change it to the reverse, the way I do it is I hold the routing button again and press that. Oh no, that's the filter, sorry. The freeze button. There's a freeze button here. The freeze button, main function, just freezes the buffer, right? So now you get this continuous. Now you get this continuous just buffer cycling of the reverb, right? Which is really nice. Now if I turn that off, and if I use now the routing plus freeze, that changes the reverb to that reverse reverb. Let me turn down the delay. And let's turn down the pre-delay on this as well. By the way, the routing key, its main function is not shift, it's actually changing the routing. You have 3 options for the routing. One of them is effects followed by distortion followed by the filter, which is like the default, right? It's when you have it unlit. Then you have half lit is distortion followed by the filter followed by the effects, which is what I like to use. I like the reverb, for example, to stay on even if I filter everything down. Reverb at the end of the chain, and as well as the delay, which is nice. But sometimes it's cool to have the filter cut everything off, right? Including the effects. So that would be number 1. So number 2 is distortion followed by the filter followed by the effects. And number 3 is really interesting. It's the filter followed by the effects followed by the distortion. So it's having the distortion as your end of chain. So that's this right here. So if I turn the distortion, it'll distort even the reverb. Right, super nice. Okay. Now, by the way, if you don't have your clock running the delay time, there's a tap right here. So I could, remove the clock and just tap the tempo there. And what's cool about that is that it's not as precise. And some people prefer their delay to be a little loose, to not be so locked in. It makes it more audible because it doesn't just, otherwise it sounds like just a sequence repeating, right? I bring my time division up high. It gets into carpus strong territory. Right? That's the delay as an oscillator right now. And there's a CV input with 1 volt per octave response. So it's actually made to be used as a carpus strong voice as well, on top of everything else that it does, right? Okay, so what else? See how that delay is almost like a comb filter right now? Let's go back to having the effects last, so they're not affected by the distortion. And we'll bring the delay back down. I find that the delay and reverb are nice and subtle when they're at the 9 o'clock position or slightly higher. That's where I like them usually, unless I'm going for a more extreme effect. So let's go back to the main reverb algo, which is the hall. This sequence is getting boring. Let me do something to it. feel like that tail's too long when you have the beat on, and maybe the reverb mount is too much as well. Nice. This is nice and subtle. It's still there, giving it that room, that ambience. At random, that's a good point. Many people have pointed this out. Loving the knobs, hating the jacks all over. Okay, now the way I think of this, indeed, the jacks look like if you plug cables in, they're going to get in the way of the knobs. Now, these jacks are for repeat CV, tail CV, freeze. The clock in is all the way down, doesn't get in the way of anything. And the trigger in for the sidechain is also on the edge here, where it doesn't get in the way of anything. These are the only two that I really consider using regularly, because I'd see this module as something for manual control of performance. Of course, you can go more experimental and CV everything. And the way I would do that, if when eventually I do that, I will probably just use tendrils. I'll use right angle cables that don't get in the way of the knobs. The knobs are nice and tall too, so even if I use like a conventional cable, I can still get to the knobs pretty well. But I can imagine how if you have everything plugged in, that it would indeed get crowded. But I don't think that's the intention with this module. I think it's, one thing or two things you might want to modulate externally. Otherwise, it's what's cool about it is precisely having this control manually, right? To turn that filter, to play around with the delay, to play around with the reverb, with the resonance of the filter. Everything has CV control, but I consider that just a nice option to have, but not necessarily the preferred workflow for this thing. A sound proposition says if you're using the CV inputs, it's likely the knobs won't be used much. That's true too, right? So basically, if you're gonna be modulating that filter frequency, or just using it for everything, right, with LFOs and random voltages and sequencers, then it's likely that it's likely that you won't be actually using your hands so much. Then you're basically automating everything and kind of set it and forget it and let it do its thing. So yeah, I think of it kind of as either or situation, where you're either going to be using your hands to control it as a performance device, or if you're going more experimental and want modulation of everything, then you probably won't be using the knobs that much. And really, the spacing is fine. And it's nice that, I know some people prefer all their jacks in the bottom or on the top, but I find that it's nice to have them near their respective knob, because it's more intuitive. You don't have to be reading, what it's saying. You just know right next to the distortion knob is the distortion CV input. If you want to modulate that, plug something in there and you're done. Now, so I, of course I'm biased because I did get this module for free from Endorphins to do this review. And I love Endorphins, and they're my friends, so I'm probably prone to defending them. But yeah, hey, Dreamer mentions that it's not a very DIY module. No, it's not DIY, and this channel has not been only DIY for a long time. I still do a lot of build videos, but it's more general. It's more about making music with modulars and music technology overall. So I hope that's okay with my legacy viewership. But yeah, I'm definitely, I'm called synth DIY guy here on YouTube, but I'm more than that in real life. My day job is actually composing music for media libraries, for films and series and stuff. So what I'm really interested in making music. I even got into DIY because 12 years ago there weren't that many affordable options for analog synths and modular synths and stuff. So I started building. But yeah, my main focus nowadays really is just making music with all this stuff. But I will never, not do build videos as well. It's still part of the channel. It's just expanded. So I hope that's okay. Ed Random says, cool, Dreamer. Thank you for forgiving me. And there will always be build videos for you to watch in the future. Ed Random says, I get why they've put jacks at destinations. It's just not my thing. Okay. Yeah, that's the beauty of Eurorack and modular in general, is there's something for everyone. There are different approaches, and you can always find something that'll work for your approach. One thing you could do, for example, if you want this to be more ordered, you can use tendrils to route all of the inputs to a sort of patch bay, mini jack patch bay, where you'd have everything ordered the way you like it, and the tendrils are really, they're much shorter than the knobs, so they wouldn't get in the way at all. You could just use the top of the knob to turn, and yeah, it would look crowded, but it wouldn't get in the way. Anyway, with that out of the way, with the disclaimers and stuff, there are a few things left to talk about. For example, the comb filter, right? Because the filter doesn't only act as a resonant ladder type filter, right? Which is its main feature. Now, if you hold this button right here, BPF versus comb, now it's a bandpass filter, right? Instead of low pass, high pass, which is also pretty cool, right? But if I use the modifier key, the routing key, the shift key, now it's a comb filter. It's a resonant comb filter, so check out that effect. And it can get pretty extreme, see? This is great for transitions, for build-ups. Now, the resonance knob here acts differently. So when it's in the middle, you get nearly no comb filtering, right? But when you turn it to the left, it starts getting more resonant. And it emphasizes certain harmonics. Whereas if I turn it to the right, it's different harmonics. This is a feature I really like. I don't have a resonant comb filter in my system. So this is definitely a use for sound design. It's actually a sound design powerhouse too, this module. You don't only have to use it as an end of chain, does it all module for now. Let's go back to the normal filter. So shift filter button. Okay, I have the compressor high. Let's add a little distortion. And let's play around with the sidechain now. Right, so as you remember from the beginning of the video, I turned the sidechain depth all the way down, but I'm sending it the same trigger that I'm sending my kick drum. And my kick drum is routed outside of the ghost from my third output here from the LXR drum module. It's going straight to my mixer, so it won't be affected, because obviously you want the kick drum to stay strong while you dip everything else when you're doing sidechain compression, also known as ducking. So now I'm gonna hold the routing button again. By the way, I have had this module one day and already I've pretty much figured out how to use it. This is very intuitive. And we'll turn that depth up higher. Alright. And now I have this controls the decay of the envelope. Hear that pulsating? Right, I probably want to turn up my overall level for the ghost here. Yeah, that's super nice. This is something I've been able to do kind of with, I think with the Ginkgo Synthes Magma, but it's a mono compressor. So for end of chain, unless you're patching in mono, it wouldn't really work unless you have two of them. It's just nice to have this here, and really well implemented. It sounds great. Dreamer's asking me if what part of the signal path is analog. None of it. It's absolutely a digital module. As soon as the audio goes in, maybe that tone control, the tilt filter, maybe that's analog. But I don't think so. I know that the distortion is an algorithm with 8-time oversampling, and I know that the sample rate and the bit depth is super high, like it's higher than I normally use for production in my DAW, for example. I actually use 24-bit 48 kilohertz for my productions. So it's super high, and this guarantees really excellent, very analog sounding response. Sounds super good. Sounds cool, right? Distortion, low pass, resonant, a little more reverb. Now, how's the routing here? Yeah, I have the effects at the end. As you see, the ducking is affecting the reverb as well, because basically what it's doing is it's dipping the output VCA, which is called post VCA. It says right here. Now here's the overdrive when you go past 3 o'clock on the output volume knob. It's really, you can be subtle about it too, like slight changes make very radical changes in the timbre. So yeah, for me, this module just solves the issue of output processing. And in fact, at first I had an output module next to it and I was routing it to the output module. But I realized that it works fine if you just send the outputs directly to a mixer or to direct boxes or whatever. I find that my mixer handles the levels fine. So I feel like it even replaces the necessity for an output module. Unless you want to have that kick drum mixed in the box, right? In which case you'd probably want a separate little mixer here where you would plug the stereo outputs from the Ghost and then the kick drum or whatever else you would want to go outside of the Ghost. You would plug it in there. But I find that external mixers are better for that anyway. But yeah, it wouldn't be a big deal. I could just put another ST mix next to it over here, use those outputs, and then I could route the kick drum directly outside of the Ghost. It would be nice, one feature request for maybe a V2 of the Ghost would be to just have a single mono input that gets summed to the stereo just for that purpose, you know, just for when you're using sidechain. you can send the kick drum in there and get it mixed automatically and not have to use an external mixer or anything. Look, I've turned down the decay on the sidechain. So now it's just as long as the kick itself. Very cool. Let's turn up that kick drum pitch. Maybe make it a shorter decay a little bit. That's too high. Let's bring it back down. Cool. Well, at this point, I'm just having fun with it. Dreamer, you say volume drive maybe as well? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Even the way it's set up, you know, the way that it engages the drive when you go past a certain point on the knob, that seems like programming to me. Duotrix, I didn't buy this. I was sent it to do this review by Endorphins themselves. So I can't answer your question about where to buy it. I think you can pre-order it from Perfect Circuit already. Not sure if it's already shipping. Alright, so I think I've talked about most of it. So there's repeat CV, there's dry wet CV for the filter, there's cutoff CV with its own attenuator for the filter. There's volt per octave CV of the filter. Right, so if you have it in high resonance, you can use it as an oscillator too. Right. There's volt per octave input of the delay, so you can use the delay as a Carpus strong voice. If you don't know that, it's physical modeling. It's like the basic physical modeling method is called Carpus strong, and it's just using a delay and modulating the delay time to achieve different pitches. How does the delay work? Okay, the delay, hold on. I need to change the sequence because I'm bored of it. Sorry. Oh, see, hear that noise? That's just when you stop it and the distortion is high, and then you hear it. Also, I think there's some interference. Oh, I think my cleaning lady is vacuuming. Anyway, so how does the delay work? There are two knobs. So one of them is the delay dry wet, right? Right, and then there's the repeats, which is just the feedback. Now the repeats has a second function. So if I hold routing, which is our shift key, I can change the filtering of the filter, see? Of the delay. So I can make the repetitions really dark or really bright or anywhere in the middle. So that's the tone. It even says right here, tone. Whenever you see big bold letters, that's the main function of the knob, and then smaller letters after it is the secondary function that you achieve by holding the shift key. Right? And then there's the time division over here, which gives us... Right now it's not doing anything because... Oh, right, because I was holding the shift key. Actually, I think that's because there we go. I had the clock in and I wasn't sending in any clock because the sequencer stopped. So now I can tap the tempo. So it's actually a really nice delay. You have tone, feedback, time division, dry wet, and tap tempo, clock input, and CV control for for use as an oscillator and Carpo Strong. So yeah, it's actually, even if I had just a module that did only what this delay does, it would be a really cool stereo delay to have in my system. But it's just one of the many things that the Ghost does. What is the first negative thing you found on it, or you think is missing? I thought I mentioned something that I thought would be nice. Oh yeah, I thought it would be nice to have just one little jack with maybe a trim pot for volume to insert the kick drum directly to the stereo output, so that when you're using side chaining, you don't have to use an external mixer. That would be nice. What other thing would I want? I did mention something to the designer that I think he's already fixed. I'm using a beta firmware that might go public, which was a little bit more gain compensation, because I felt when I turned up the distortion, the volume went up, and sometimes when you want to when you're in performance, you don't want to have to worry too much. You just want to turn that distortion, get a change in timbre, but not necessarily have to compensate by turning down the volume. So the compressor pretty much solved that problem. Hobbyist is asking if I can clock it in audio rate. Clocking delay in audio rate. Well, that would be sending it the CV. Yeah. So yeah, you would for audio rate. Oh no, that actually is CV for pitch, right? Audio rate clocking. That's interesting. That's an interesting question. Why don't we try it? Let me get a cable here and plug in an oscillator. Oh, this cable's stuck. So I guess I can just take the... I don't actually have any like normal regular oscillators in this performance case right now. I have the 3-body. Let's hear what the 3-body is sounding like right now. So yeah, so this is audio rate. Let me take the triangle output and turn this back down and send that to the clock input. Yeah, check it out. It's a cool effect. Let's turn the repeats up. Hey, good question. Super cool. That was a good idea. I'm enjoying clocking it in audio rate. Let me turn down the phase and frequency modulation of this oscillator here. Cool effect. Yeah, this thing is an amazing sound design powerhouse. So many possibilities. I think Andrew and Andreas had excellent ideas and implemented it very nicely. I'm loving it. It's already one of my favorite modules, and it's living in my performance case where most of my most favorite stuff is. I have like 10 times this amount of modules, maybe, or at least like 5. And these are like the VIPs. Wow, check that out. Now another thing I could try is send the same CV to the oscillator, right, and have it track. But I think we get the idea that this works super nicely. Turn the resonance down here. Dual tricks. I hope this was intended by Endorphins. I don't know. It doesn't really matter if it was intended. I mean, it's pretty normal to serendipitously find extra uses in modules beyond what the original manufacturer had intended. So I don't really care if they intended it, but I think they might have, because otherwise the clock might have a limitation, might be band limited. So it might not really go beyond what is still considered rhythm. The fact that it does respond to audio rate is really great, whether or not it was intended. There's a freeze input too, so if you want, you can send an external trigger to freeze the reverb. What else? There's so much, and I've been talking for what, almost an hour, and I don't think I've covered everything, or maybe I have. There's compressor CV, compression CV, distortion CV, um, resonance CV, dry wet for the reverb CV, dry wet for the filter CV, repeat CV. Volt per octave input for the delay for when you're using it as a Carpo strong oscillator. The reverb algorithm has tail control, pre-delay control. It's two algorithms, so a Hall and a reverse. There's CV for that tail, and the dry wet. You can change the routing. There are 3 preset routings, so effects, distortion, filter, distortion, filter effects, and filter effects distortion, and those are just one button press away. It's just right here. You get unlit, half lit, and fully lit. There's tap tempo for the delay. There's clock input for the delay. I don't know what else to say. Distortion, the distortion's controllable as well. There is okay. Hi, DivKid. Nice to see you here, man. Big fan of your channel. Let's see. Daltrix says voltage auto rate is how modular systems tend to work. Yeah, I guess, but you know, it really depends on the function of the module, and if it's digital or analog. You know, some things don't work in audio rate, and some things do. Ed Random asks what microprocessor is in there. I don't know. I haven't looked that up. Sorry, I can't say. What else? I expect an STM32. Yeah, it could be. It's likely that it is. Yeah, Div, so nice to see you here. Anyway, voltage audio rate is how much this is worth. Hi, Div kids. Didn't say hi at DMF, but I'll say it now here. New generation ARM Cortex. I was saying voltage that I didn't understand. It's just all voltages. Right, yeah. But I think what he means is that things should respond to audio rate modulation, and because that's generally analog modules normally do, right? If, for example, you can use a sequencer as a wave shaper if you send audio rate clock, and then you know you can create sort of your waveform with the different steps, even though it isn't originally intended to be used with audio rate. So there's lots of modules like that. Max delay time? I don't know. Let's find out. Well, that's already super slow right there. Wow, it's seconds. It's super long. Oh, Dreamer found out it's the ARM Cortex M7. So it's not the STM32. Yeah, the delay is super long. And you do have tone control for it. Time division. If I'm not sending a clock in and I haven't tapped the tempo, so it's pretty free right now. Right. Feedback puts in a self oscillation. Ah, Dreamer is looking it up. Tap delay with maximum delay time up to 2.5 seconds. Yeah, it's massive. And DivKid says, hi Kinkas, thanks, not spoke for ages, hope you're good. I hope you're good too, and indeed, it's been a while. Hopefully we'll get to meet you in person at Super Booth next year. I'm planning to go. The sequencer wave shaper is a nice trick, easy to visualize octave shifts and pulses, etc. Yeah, I've done this in a few videos. I think the Vinicius Electric Lizard module is meant to do that. It's actually it's digital actually, and it does respond to audio rate, and you can use it to shape your waves. Right? There's too much delay. Let's turn that down a little bit. And okay, so yeah, we're coming. It's been an hour, and I think I've covered everything that, at least that I've found out, this module can do up to this point. I haven't really sent a lot of external modulation to the parameters, but I guess you've seen me tweak it manually. You can imagine how an LFO might do that, or anything else. At some point, I might do another video, trying some of the more experimental things, more sound designy things, not so much just using it as an end of chain global effects processor output module. And I thank you all for hanging out in my first live stream in a long time. I think it's been years, and it might be a format I will use more in the future, since it will make things more dynamic, because I can just sit in front of the camera and talk to you guys, answer questions, and it doesn't take as long as multiple filming, editing, mixing, etc. So you're probably going to see more of these live streams in the channel. If you haven't already, please click like and subscribe. Right, the usual call to action, and yeah, stay tuned for the next thing. Let's look at the last little messages here. Computers usually good for the effects part on the digital part. Thanks for the demo, Kinkas. It's my pleasure. Don't know how good it sounds as a global chain with all this digital. Well, that's kind of a prejudice. I mean, most people are mixing and mastering in digital domain anyway, and not even using 32 bits, 96 kilohertz. So it sounds great, honestly. You send an analog sound to it and then turn everything down, you get that same sound in the end. The conversion is really great, and there's not a lot of noise. So that's it. That's been my deep dive. I hope you all have enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. All right. Cheers, everyone. Bye bye. Oh, and stay noisy.